All right, welcome back. Yet another video with our paleo expert, the one, the only Dr. Brian Curtice, Dr. BC of Fossil Crates. Good to have you back, Brian, chatting this time. If you haven't seen our other two videos, check those out because those take us through our two trips in the US in spring of 2024. We've got Route 66 million years ago, our exploration of California and Arizona, and we've got Red Rocks and Raptors. That's our Utah and Colorado trips. But I also want to talk a little bit about Dr. BC himself. You're our paleo leader on this. You're the guy unlocking all the special rooms for us, opening up the drawers other people don't get access to. But I think it was worth, we've charted the route that we'll be taking for both those experiences with you. But let's chart the route of your experience in paleontology. How did you become Dr. BC, the founder of Fossil Crates, the guy who has all this access for us? I guess, I'm going to ask you the same question and get this interview going the same way I do with everybody that I'm talking to for our Working with Dinosaurs feature here. Where did you first fall in love with dinosaurs? Where did this start for you?
My parents would tell you as a fetus.
Okay.
There's seemingly never a time that I wasn't enamored in some capacity with dinosaurs. So they were ubiquitous. Every toy, and back in the 70s, there weren't a lot of dinosaur toys, but I seemed to have one of every one. Books, anything I could get my hands on, and the internet didn't exist, so I grew up in libraries and interlibrary loan, bigger libraries we would go to. It was incredible how I played with dinosaurs and thought about them and read everything I could. There was no YouTube. There was documentaries were few and far between. So I had to just get my fix however I could via the technology that was available at the time. And then I also discovered computers. So I was a self-taught programmer. I loved computing, and I wasn't sure, I wanted to chase paleo, but I also thought it'd be fun to play with computers. And ultimately, various things happened. And in ASU, I went to undergrad at Arizona State and was a physical anthropology major because they had no dinosaurs, and computer science and I weren't going to ultimately work out. So I was started my career as just, typical physical anthro. I'm learning human bones, human anatomy, but you also get to play with non-human bones because you have to know what you found isn't human. How do you know what bone this belongs to? And that's comparative morphology, comparative osteology. And then I went and 1993 was my first dinosaur dig. I went up in Montana and said, wow, I worked construction throughout my high school and college years. So that translated quite nicely into paleontology. I knew how to use all the heavy equipment. I knew how to use all the smaller equipment. And I come in out of the blue and they're like, wow, who are you? So that was really great. Graduate program, master's in geology at Brigham Young University. So that was an interesting experience. A wonderful place. I'm not LDS, but they opened their hearts and kindness to me, and I had a wonderful 23 months. I lived what I calculated up. I lived 10 months in a tent during that time at various dinosaur quarries, constantly digging dinosaurs. So it was absolutely awesome. Uh, Worked all over the Jurassic and Cretaceous of the Southwest, studied sauropods, the long-necked, long-tailed animals, and then went on and started a PhD at SUNY Stony Brook in human gross anatomy, emphasis on gross, and got a PhD. Went back and got a PhD in 2014, so fairly recently, in educational technology. I still couldn't leave tech alone, and I wanted to understand where the educational system came from and how does this all work together? So I've got a fairly diverse background, and in there, I worked in corporate America for a number of years, running first banging the phones and then working at a telecenter, a contact center for selling computers. So I did get my computer fixed. I got deep into technology. I was right around during the dot-com era, the Y2K and dot-com. Had a great experience playing with technology, learning how to use it, learning how to sell it, how it's used, deployed. Then I was working during COVID. The Arizona Museum of Natural History closed, and every museum closed. And I said, uh-oh, this is bad, because the whole time I've been researching sauropods. So I started with Dr. Christy Lopez, And the folks at Rocky Mountain Dinosaur Resource Center, Jacob Jett and Michael Treebold, plus a private equity firm called AZ Crown, we got together and said, well, let's bring the museum home. So we created fossil crates, which is, as you see behind me, some of our work: teeth, claws, jaws, and casts. I knew where all the bodies were at. I called all my buddies and said, look, I can help you fund we'll give you a royalty in exchange for allowing us to officially, or let us sell your product. We don't necessarily, if you don't want people to know it's your product, that's cool. But we work with the museums, and now we sell items from all over the world. We're adding product continuously, and a percentage of every sale goes back to research. We give it to the museum so they can go find new stuff and perpetuate the cycle, because there's just not enough funding in paleontology. And since then, we've branched out into, we have a virtual reality T-Rex that we have for exhibits. We got into the exhibit space called Express Exhibits. I run a podcast twice a month where I bring on paleontologists called Fossil Crates Live. It used to be called Paleo Portals. And that's where I bring on people like me, and we chat for an hour, and you get the real-time access to them. I'm giving you way more life story than you probably were looking for, but the punchline is I have had a very squiggly line in paleo, but the one thing, or the two things that have remained true: I have continued to research regardless of when I was full-time Forward America. All of my vacation days were spent in museums, and I have kept the network alive. I've constantly kept in touch with paleontologists, always trying to meet new ones, keeping the old relationships strong, being helpful, sharing information. And now I work with the next generation. There is a crop of paleontologists coming up today in the grad schools that are amazing. They're taking technology and they're putting it all together. And I'm delighted to be able to help those folks out.
Now, you've given me a lot that we need to unpack there, certainly, across your journey. But, and I have found this with a lot of folks who I've talked to in the realm of paleontology, whether they're paleontologists themselves or researchers or educators. And it seems that they're bringing all these different pieces. There's really no straightforward road into paleontology for everybody that I've spoken to. A lot of people did something along the lines you did, which was start down one track and then paleontology kind of grabbed them, or started down the paleontology track, got distracted off it before coming back to it. Or, in cases like me, like I'm not a paleontologist by any stretch of any imagination. The last science class I took was still back in high school, and I was struggling with it, which was, one of the reasons I didn't become a paleontologist. But I have found my way into a world where I get to work with paleontologists, work with dinosaurs, getting these incredible access, thanks to people like you as we do these things. So there's all these different routes in. And then what you do with that, some people are the paleontologists in the most academic sense of the word. Other folks are just, they might have a day job, but come dig season, they're enthusiastic to get out there and join some of these digs. Or there's people who are just on the periphery and dip back in every once in a while. But then there's yourself with fossil crates, who, and this was, fossil crates when I started to create Dinosaur Trips. And I was, or before I created Dinosaur Trips, when I had this idea to perhaps make this company, and I started seeing what was, well, first, if anyone was doing something like this out there. I found out nobody was doing Dinosaur Trips. So that was step one. And okay, maybe this is a company I can make happen. But I wanted to see what the world was like around paleontology. How accessible is it? Who should I be following? Who should I be talking to get into these areas? And Fossil Crates was one of the first things that I stumbled upon through my social media account, and saw what you guys were doing, and saw this opportunity that you were creating to make paleontological accessible to those of us who are just the hobbyists, just the nerds who enjoy the idea of it. Make it something tangible. Take it down from, the ivory tower of academia that seems so inaccessible to people. And so that was my first kind of introduction to what you were doing. And I was like, okay, this is an interesting company. Let's see who the folks are behind it. I think I first got in contact because we like to really be able to provide a whole bunch of other stuff beyond the trips themselves to our guests. So I think I reached out being like, these products you're making, these crates, these fossil crates, they're pretty cool. Could they be a gift for our guest at the end of the tour? And you were immediately like, oh man, Dinosaur Trips is something I've had in the back of my mind. This is a realm to be explored. And a lot of paleontologists I've talked to have said, we saw this as something that could happen and that maybe this should exist, but nobody kind of had the wherewithal to put A and B together, I guess. But yeah, when I finally got talking to you and we started having these conversations about what we could do together, I saw, okay, this is somebody who's really aligned with what I want to do, to bring paleontology to the average person, give them a chance. If you're a big fan of any of these many specimens, get that raptor claw like they've always been dreaming of that they saw in Jurassic Park, or go out from there, put that skull on their desk, have that tangible something at home. And then I don't know. I see you being our paleo leader for these trips with Dinosaur Trips in May, as just an extension of that. Let me make paleontology. Let me make dinosaurs accessible to anybody.
And that's where the page, I had never been on social media. I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. So I go to Instagram and I max out its characters on every post ever since.
You do.
Excuse me. I don't know why they limit you, but they do. And Twitter's the worst. So as I realized originally it was just going to be this real hardcore channel. I'm going to show you pictures of bones, and I'm going to tell you all these super laminar intricacies, and you're going to love it. And I realized that nobody really cared about that.
Right.
But what they did like is when I showed them museum specimens, when I showed them things on display, behind the scenes. A lot of times it's tough to show behind the scenes because museums don't want people to know for a variety of reasons, none of which I agree with. But I have now realized that Fossil Crates on the social media side puts a lot of sharing just the front end, what we see, because I'm Gandalf the Grey. I hit 70 museums plus a year. And most people if they hit 7 in a year, it was an epic year. That was my Tuesday. So as a result, the thought process was, well, let's share all these museums. And I don't charge for the services. I am so honored to share these smaller museums that no one even knows exists unless you live in that town. So I really wanted to democratize paleontology in that sense, showcase what's out there, let people know via the paleo portals how you become a paleontologist. I'm so, I'm so happy with the outcome of that project. It makes us no money, and it's a lot of time, but it's a labor of love, because I have had a half dozen people who've joined us have gone on to either go to a grad school, an undergrad, or work in a museum as a docent, a curator, a preparator, just because I know so many people, I can put them in touch with other folks. So I feel like I'm helping out and paying it forward, and also giving it back to the people that helped me. So I love Dinosaur Trips. When we chatted, I saw here's a gentleman in Zach who knows what he's doing, and you hit it on the head. We've thought this idea is not novel. It's always about execution, and no one in paleo. I mean, we live in tents. We sleep on the ground. We don't shower. Food is a cold can of beans. We're not exactly the most welcoming in terms of great. I want to go on a vacation and sleep in my backyard where it's cold and hot and dangerous and miserable. You show up with the solution to all of that. I'm like, wow, this is peanut butter, chocolate, and coconut, since I like mouth bars.
Yeah, no, the paleontology can lack the hospitality element a little bit. So hopefully that's what I'm bringing to the whole thing. But I want to talk more about fossil crates and what you've been doing there. First of all, I don't think we've properly got into what it is that you do at fossil crates. So explain that a little bit. To me, it's a marriage of artistry and technology to then really recreate these. This isn't some half-assed recreation. These are awesome, really detailed, pretty much scientific specimens.
So we shoot for research grade. So
Right.
by that, the specimens we offer in almost every case are three-dimensional scans, or they are exact molds of the material, the original material.
Yeah.
And that is important to me as a researcher. So people have used our specimens for research in a pinch. If you can't go get your hands on a T-Rex claw, well, we've got a cast. If you're looking for that Utah raptor killing claw, but you can't make it to Utah, we've got them, and they're inexpensive for what you get. They're way inexpensive.
Yeah.
And the artistry comes in because I went and gathered a stable of young artists, of folks who had, in many cases, it's the first time they've been paid for their artwork. And so I commission artwork. So every crate, and they're little, I'm looking around, I might go get one. Every crate has artwork in it, and it has an info sheet on the animal that I write personally. But we've discovered our best sellers have quickly become these, and with good reason. So this skull behind me is one of our products. We got the laser scans working with Dr. David Kraus. He's the Madagascar paleontologist, allowed us to three-dimensionally scan and then make out of polyresin 3D print that particular skull. And then we pay them a large royalty to go give back to the people. Well, not everyone has $4,000 in space. Most people have room for Majungasaurus. We took the exact file, and thanks to modern technology, we're able to. It's more than push a few buttons, but this is an exact a one to 3.5 ratio. So it's a scale model of the animal behind us, but it's the same bones just shrunk down. So I know firsthand, personally, of Tyrannosaur researchers who have taken our Tufts Love skull, of which 100% of the bones were found, and they are doing uh, principal component analyses, finite element analyses off of a scan. Terrifies me on one level, but it's easier and it's directionally correct for their first into their study. So before you commit all this time, money, and energy, they'll use our scaled products. And then we're not just, I mean, here's one of my favorites, the direwolf. This thing is cool looking. And we've got Smilodon, go to our website. We were adding 3 more February 1st, Majungasaurus, which you just saw, and then you've heard it here first, Megacerops, which is the old Brontotherium, the thunder beast with the cool horns, and a new species of Mosasaurus. And we then provide also individually, so you don't have to buy a crate. A number of our items we sell, and they come with the same artwork, same information sheet, because to us, it's that educational component. We're Class Wallet certified, so if you have an ESA, an empowerment scholarship for your state, it's likely you can procure the product via your state vehicle and have the monies that are set aside for education. We're qualified for it because my educational technology background allowed me to use academic pedagogy and paradigms of learning and apply that in the information that we provide. So we're kind of a one-stop shop. We also provide services for academics and teachers who have presentations, libraries. We call them edu-crates. And so we'll make customized crates depending on your particular geography or your thing you're trying to teach to someone. So we are truly a multifaceted company that is growing, and we've now got into tech. Heck, we're playing with CT scanning. So we're all over the place, and all in a good way, because it's all comes back to making it so it's not so erudite, and working with you, and we're hopefully working with you on down the road, dinosaur digs to actually go out in the field. But for now, since we don't offer it, if someone wants to go on a dinosaur dig, I can tell you the best places to go depending on what you want out of your experience. So we're Christy, Dr. Lopez calls us Paleo Hub behind the scenes. We're just the nexus of all things paleo, trying to get in there. What we hope in 2025 is we'll have some plastic dinosaurs as well, because people ask us all the time, skulls are cool, but we want like this Amargasaurus from my childhood. People want these kind of animals.
Yeah.
So we're looking at with the 3D technology and artists, maybe we put those together.
So I really like what Dr. Lopez calls you the Paleo Hub. And that's something I wanted to talk a little bit more about, is just the community that you have found. I mean, obviously, as you said, you're very in touch with actual paleontologists. You're always talking with people who are on the front line of this thing, making the new discoveries. You're going to more museums maybe than anyone on Earth, as far as I can tell, in a year. But beyond that, people like myself, who have found fossil crates for just the fact that you got cool skulls and claws that you made available. But there's an excitement around it. I mean, we've had guests who have come on Dinosaur Trips and were like, "Oh yeah, I know about fossil crates." Like that was one of the first places I kind of landed and found my way to Dinosaur Trips. So talk a little bit about, if you could, just the world of paleontology for people who aren't paleontologists, because there's a much larger community. And thank God. I mean, I hoped it existed before I started this company, but I found it does exist, of people who are really passionate and interested about this, but aren't paleontologists themselves, or even in an adjacent community to it.
Absolutely. The paleontology, everyone, well, almost everyone starts out loving dinosaurs at some point in their life.
Yeah,
And then very few still play in the dirt in their 50s. So they wise up, go find a job that pays them some money, gives them some stability, but they never lost that fire and that love. And museums can be they can be Byzantine. They're their own culture, and it's
yeah,
not always easy. They like to say they are, but they're not always easy to get into. And where do you turn? So thankfully, with the internet, there's lots of psychomers. I didn't even know that. You know, who are they? I started looking around, and there's all kinds of interested people making videos, high quality, very solid videos for the public consumption, for they're making it to share. And a lot of academics, they don't share their content because they're off working on the next project. They're out running around trying to do, get the grant permit, then get the grant, get the permit, fill out the paperwork for the permit once the work's done, deal with the administrivia and the bureaucracy. The real life paleontologists, 90% of them said, wow, I didn't realize how much time I'd be sitting at a desk filling out TP, what is that? TP 214 papers from one of those movies. They're filling out paperwork. They're not doing paleo, and it drives them nuts. So the community at large, if you want to get into the academics, they're often, you can't find their names, you can't find their emails. They're not all vibrant, friendly people externally. Once you get to know them, most of them are. They're just at an arm's length. And so there's this community, this world out there. And fossil crates, we like to think from our fossil crates channel, we're family friendly. We try to post a video a day of something fun, try to find fun music with it. We always give a maxed out list of information about it, because that's part of the fun, is to have you think about it and ponder. And when we go out, we do social events. I was in Texas a couple weeks ago, and we did an event where we laid out a bunch of dinosaur bones at a restaurant. And before that, I was at a couple schools. So we bop around, and wherever we go, we try to interact with the public. We try to share our love of paleo and our enthusiasm of paleo, because dinosaurs are for everyone. No one owns dinosaurs. No one can copyright the dinosaurs, at least not yet. Hopefully they can't. It's a natural object. And so as a result, T-Rex is as much yours as it's much mine, as it's much someone in other countries.
Yeah, T-Rex doesn't belong to Barnum Brown just because he's
No.
no.
Great point. And what another thing I love about it, and so I was on a call just before we spoke, and things like fanboy came up, and diehards, and are avid enthusiasts,
Yeah.
and they're sometimes used pejoratively because
Yes.
people have passions, but it's almost like a sports team in a way. I'm rooting for Spinosaurus. I want Giganotosaurus. T-Rex is my dinosaur. And when you realize that dinosaurs aren't just these pieces of bone. I'm looking around here trying to find a skull. Well, we'll just use this one. They're not the antorbital fenestra and the nuances of the premaxilla. That's where the paleontologists live. The average person doesn't care about that. The next level thinks the skulls are cool, but they want to see the life restorations. And what I love is it's almost impossible for your average paleontologist, I think it drives them crazy, to say, no, it wasn't polka dotted. No, it didn't look like that. We have biological parameters that we know exist that we can work around. But beyond that, dinosaurs are a sense of freedom. They're extinct. So for young children, they're these giants that are safe. And what I learned in my educational research is children love dinosaurs in part because it's one of the first things that they can master better than their parents. So when they go to a museum at age 6, they're now the leader. They've never led before. They've always been part of rules and structures, and now they're showcasing their knowledge. And it's an empowering situation for children that love dinosaurs with the parents say, yeah, Johnny, Sally, show us what you know. We're at the museum. It's your show.
Well, talking to terrifying, that's the most terrifying thing to me about leading dinosaur trips, particularly our family adventures, is these kids are all coming in armed with way more information than I have as a 39-year-old. 9-year-old me had more information than I do now, despite the fact that I'm out here working with paleontologists every day and thinking about dinosaurs at all times. I still can't, my brain can't pack in what it did when I was a kid and was just absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs. It's crazy. But like you said, there's not, I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there who have just absolutely no interest in dinosaurs whatsoever. They couldn't care less. Yeah, there's going to be those folks, but you don't meet a ton of them. And I've noticed this since I started this company, and people ask what I'm up to, and I tell them about dinosaur trips. And I'm sure you've seen this with fossil crates. It's like everyone's just like, "Oh man, that is cool!" Like, and this isn't somebody who's been to a dinosaur museum maybe ever in their life, or if they have, it was as part of some other experience. They've watched probably some of the Jurassic movies, but dinosaurs are not something they've spent any time really thinking about beyond, kind of how they exist in our pop culture around us. But you talk about these experiences, or I talk about the museums that we've gone to, especially when I talk about getting access to digs, like we're doing again this summer up in Alberta. And it's just something people can't help but get excited about. It's something that, like you said, that unlocks from your childhood on. There's an enthusiasm. They're cool. They're just cool. They're very. I think the size is a contributor to it. The danger, but as you say, not a danger to us in any way anymore. It sparks the imagination. So I'm always, for people who are kind of on the fence of like, is it dinosaur trips for me or not? I just say like it is going to be for you. Watch what happens when you get on these trips. What I've seen happen when we've done them thus far is usually you've got your dino enthusiast, your diehard, all those terms that you were just talking about, the nerd who's kind of convinced the partner, the parent, the friend, come along with me on this adventure. And all right, I'll come along. We're going to do some horseback riding. We'll do caving. We'll see the Grand Canyon. We'll go to Universal Studios, whatever it is that you use to bring that person along. By the end of the trip, it's the person who didn't come in with the excitement about paleontology who has their mind blown in a way that they're just like, oh man, can I get that book now? Like, I got to go deeper on this. I didn't know anything, talking about a ceratopsid. What is that? I don't know. Now they're all in on it. They can't believe this kind of world that's unlocked. And that's what's really fun is like the dinosaur enthusiast is obviously going to have a great time, but the other people are just kind of get caught up in everything that can be really fun about dinosaurs. And yeah, it's nerdy. But so are comic books, and Marvel has just had a heck of a run in that department. There's a lot of room in whatever nerddom that you're in for this big tent. And yeah, I've seen it on Twitter in particular, where there's certainly some gatekeeping around some things. Fights can happen, as does in any hardcore community. You're comparing it to sports fandom. I mean, there's nowhere worse than being on sports Twitter. I'm a huge sports fan, but that's a terrible place to be sometimes. So yes, that happens, but it really is, from the level of enthusiasm, something that I've been excited to get to join the community surrounding it, of people who just find a passion in this, find excitement in this, and are bringing more people into it.
And you mentioned sports. What I find fascinating, excuse me, is sports at the end of the argument, in many arguments, you can just point to scoreboard.
Right.
Whether or not my team was better than your team, that team won.
Yeah.
And if the ultimate outcome is who's the champion of that year, who was jobbed by the refs, yeah, we got all that happen.
Sure.
But that team won. In paleo, and what I love about it is there is almost never definitive 100% that's right. And it can be overturned by a new find. A new specimen can turn the thoughts. In Arizona, when Zuniceratops was found, oh my goodness, that changed the ceratopsian world. It's like, what? And nobody knew it was coming. And then it's called research. That means to search again. If you think about what the word means, it causes everyone to go and research the areas that they already thought they knew. And with the dinosaur knowledge changing so rapidly, kids come in and they know way more than their parents, because 20% of the parents' information is no longer considered valid. The names have changed, the thoughts have changed. So they're empowered. But the what I love about the youth is they come in because they've watched a video on something, and I get to show them, guess what? That information is not correct, or it's not as cut and dried as that particular video would make you think.
Yes.
And I hope when they leave, they can still believe what they'd like, but they are open to the fact of the scientific method, and these are testable, reproducible. This is science ultimately, and it causes them to think and question and ponder. And I think that's why paleo leads to so much scientists, the people that love dinosaurs, is you start off and you start realizing, wait, it's not that's the longest and that's the heaviest. As you start reading into it and you get a little older, you're like, wow, that's so many variables involved. And like, it's too many variables. I'm out. But I love the length, and so I love the math. So now I'm an engineer.
Right. Yeah, no, it's constantly evolving. It's constant. There's always something new to learn, discover, unpack. And you don't get that necessarily in certain other parts of fandom, especially ones that are obsessed with canon, which many fandoms are. I mean, this is one that you have to accept the opposite. And I hope and I think that one of the things that's so great about getting into paleontology and experiencing it is presenting that way of looking at the world to folks, whether kids for one, but even adults, is like reconsidering things as you learn more is important. And all science does that, but I think there's something about dinosaurs that just makes it feel a little more tangible than chemistry or physics or something that are much more conceptual based. And but yeah, this idea that, like, as you're presented with new information, recontextualize everything around you, and I think it's a really healthy thing, and it's something that I find really fun about that path of paleontology is forcing people to look at things in that way. I mean, when I was a kid, we still didn't know what killed the dinosaurs. It was all theory. Now it's sort of more or was for a long time accepted that it was an asteroid. But now there's even thinking, oh, maybe it wasn't entirely that. Maybe they were on the downside before. So you've got to constantly be open to new information coming in and changing your worldview. And yeah, I know there are people in paleontology who are pretty locked in, maybe because they made some discovery and are holding on to it fast like any other thing. But in the overall general spirit of the thing is we're always pushing forward, we're always changing what we know, and so you never get sick of it. Like, there's always something new. This isn't something that you're gonna go, oh, got to the end of dinosaurs, what's next for me to learn?
And the newness, and then the willingness to adapt new technology. So paleo is so broad. You hit upon it earlier. What is paleontology? What does a paleontologist do? Well, what do you want to do? You can define what you do. There's so many. You have the person that goes and finds it. You've got the collector specialist. You've got the preparation specialist. You have the curation that keeps it safe for everyone down the line. Then you have the individual who studies it and who figures out what is it? What is it? What bone is it? What does it belong to? You've got, does it have, can we CT scan it and look and see inside it and look at all the nerves in the skull? Do we do histology and we cut it up and we determine how old it is? Can we look at pathologies? Did it have a disease of some sort? Can we look at functional mechanics, biomechanics, functional morphology? The list of things that go on that you can do to any one bone. And so you as a person have not just 100% dinosaur interest, but you have other interests that you can bring to the table: databases, mapping, the drone flights, photography, 3D scanning, the technology alone. And paleo is a discipline that embraces tech better than almost any discipline that I've ever been around,
No.
which means the audience that we draw in is enormous. I can't tell you, I probably could, how many times I've been at a museum or somewhere and a guy walks up and goes, I'm a drone pilot and I'm looking to try to find dinosaurs with drones. Or I use fluorescence up there. I can't see it, but I have a mighty fluorescent light now because I met a guy who is a gemologist that showed me how bones can fluoresce and what that could conceivably mean. I have a Geiger counter because there's a hobby radiation detector, and lots of the bones I study are radioactive. So I carry one now, and we'll take it with us on the trip just to see, is this hot or not, in a different sense than you might think.
Oh man, that's good. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about all of this forever and ever. And if You want that? Join us on these trips because these are the
So
conversations we're going to be
we'll
having
go deep into the cups.
the whole way. But yeah, it's something that I've noticed, following some of the best science communicators who are working in the paleontology space is like there's always applying these tools from other sciences and other research to paleontology in ways that nobody had really thought of. And that's because to some degree, like the research is really limited. There's only so many paleontologists. There's only so many specimens that you can be interacting with at any point. There's tons that are just sitting in drawers and boxes and waiting to be revisited in different ways. So, every time you come back to paleontology, just as an outside hobbyist, there's going to be revelations that you won't believe that have happened. And it seems like to me, as an outsider, that we're in certainly a golden age of paleontology for a variety of reasons. One, Jurassic Park, I think, kicked off people who are now in their kind of around my age and younger who have been watching the films and really decided to go into paleontology. So there's a lot of bright minds in that field now. The technology, the expansion in China from what it once was, looking for paleontology, is really giving us a lot more specimens. There's no shortage of where we can go for dinosaur trips, but where we can go from a thinking about dinosaurs, exploring dinosaurs, learning about dinosaurs level. Like you're always scratching the surface in a kind of a literal way.
And it's well played. And you reminded me of something that it happened to me just yesterday. And I emailed a paleo buddy of mine saying, hey, how come I can't find a list of the minimum and maximum number of cervical vertebrae present in fish, in amphibians, in snakes? And he's like, yeah, it's a good question. Modern animals, things that you think you should just be able to go to a chat GPT and tell me how many vertebrae does what's the maximum number of vertebrae in extant Lacertilia? And it looks at me and says 400. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's a snake. So I looked through the textbooks. It's just not there. I did a paper. I was an author on a paper that involves Sariema, which is a kind of bird that lives in Argentina
Okay.
and Brazil. And it has a killing claw like a velociraptor. And it grabs snakes and throws them. And it's a beautiful bird. It's really awesome. It turns out there's almost no published literature on this. This is an animal that if you go to Argentina, you can see it. And yet no one is studying it. And so you realize that there is so much work to be done in modern animals. So as a paleontologist, you get to go play at zoos and observe animals and do things that it's truly a discipline that you can take it anywhere you want to go. And the dinosaur trips, we're going to emphasize as we go places, the different technologies, the different mechanical practices, the different opportunities that exist. And we'll go as deep into the administrivia and academic literature as they'd like, but we'll also keep it up at the larger connections. We'll keep it to be whatever the group wants to talk and what the individuals want to chat about.
Well, obviously, there's no shortage of things that you and I want to talk and chat about, and we're going to get plenty of opportunity to do that. Can't wait till you're hosting us for our two experiences in Utah, Colorado, California, Arizona in May. And as you alluded to in this conversation, future trips to come. We're working on a whole bunch of stuff together to be exploring the world in dinosaur trips and giving people this incredible access. We got digs coming up. We got a whole bunch. Obviously, stay tuned to everything Dinosaur Trips is doing. But yeah, we really want to extend at this point the invitation to join us the spring of 2024 for those two first trips. I think they're going to be really unforgettable. Thanks again for your time, Dr. BC. We'll be seeing you in the Southwest this spring.
Thank you kindly. Adios.
Take care.